one thing that really stuck out to me is marketing's not just kind of, you think of it as sales and you think of it as really brainstorming. And in the NFL, marketing really goes on to be really technological. So a lot of people under Krista had to be really comfortable with dealing with pictures and images and editing those different images. So a lot of people say, oh, I love marketing, but if you're really not comfortable with that technology, it might not be the best area for you. But she pretty much looked into everything when the stadium was being built, and they brought her on when Levi was being built and started, and she had to pick everything from bathroom signs to paint colors on the wall to chairs, because really everything of the 49ers, everything in that stadium represents what the 49ers are. So that in a sense is marketing. Anyone that comes into that stadium has an image of 49ers. So it's pretty interesting to talk to her and be like, pick out bathroom signs or paint colors, like you don't really think about it, but it was pretty interesting.
And I apologize for technical difficulties. I don't know what's going on. Just kind of. Let's try this again. Okay.
And this was just a another slide from their sales proposals, but basically their Facebook page and how many followers they have and how important social media comes into play with marketing. And Sarah was someone who kind of stuck out to me too. She did special events, and basically anything that wasn't a football game or big concert that you had to sell tickets for, so kind of the smaller things, like trade shows and weddings and business events and proms and things like that. So, and they even had this huge event. They had a concert with, I believe it was Tim McGraw, with a local Silicon Valley company, and one of their COOs was retiring, so they brought 30,000 people into the stadium and had a private concert. So anything from a small trade show or dinner to something as big as that, she had her hands in. And like Chris said earlier, 365 days a year, they have something going on, no matter what. So whether it's any of these events, there's always something in the stadium.
And so Brent was kind of the person that I connected with the most. He deals with the corporate partnerships and sponsors, and so he does all of the naming rights and all of the sponsor advertisement around the stadium. And as you see in the background right there, it says Bud Light and Pepsi and all that good stuff right there, the Sony even. His message was to do more for less, and he really wanted the sponsors that wanted to associate themselves with the 49ers were ones that really met the philosophy of the 49ers, and every single one that they have has met every single standard. They have upheld their contracts. They have gotten all of their different signages, and Brent really opened my eyes to a new realm of the industry that I really had no real idea of what was going on. And actually, this is what I'm focusing more on, is the sponsorship side of the industry now. It's actually pretty cool. And just to show you a little bit of the area and how wide they kind of market themselves within the sponsorships. They go as far up from Levi down to eBay and up into Safeway in the Bay Area. They mainly want to stay in the Bay Area because they want to stay within this close-knit community and kind of hit home the idea of the Bay Area and the 49ers. And actually, this is another slide that they use on their proposals for actual sponsors, and I thought that was pretty cool as well.
Where's the stadium there? Yeah.
So the stadium's actually down in Santa Clara. So San Francisco's up here, and Santa Clara is down
Right where that
in the
SF
section.
is.
Yeah.
Right where that SF is, right in the middle.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I see it, okay.
And this is another proposal slide that they use for selling their name to prospective sponsors. And as we mentioned, the interns, one of their main objectives on game day is to make sure all of these LED strips and signage and all the advertisements on the big board are accounted for, recorded, and then relayed back to the sponsors. Without these interns, all of the other people have to do extra, and it just is an extra workload that they don't have time for. And so the interns actually help immensely, and it actually relays a great image on what they can do and how well they work and within the professional environment. It's pretty cool. So Sam, along with Sarah, does event coordination, but Sam does the bigger events as Monster Jam. They did the Pac-12, or they're going to do the Pac-12 championship. They've done WrestleMania and also concerts as well. And as we've mentioned, the 365 days a year are sold out, but every single suite, whether it be ground level, top level, or the club seats or whatever, those are always booked. Whether it be the concert or they can have multiple events running within the same day, and it's actually pretty cool. There was a setup for a dinner while we were meeting with the last group of people out in California, and it was so well put together, and it was just so classy that the atmosphere was unreal, and it made you really think about what you're going to be working with and the level of professionalism that you're going to be going into.
You know who won the first Pac-12 championship at Levi Strauss Stadium? Stanford. Stanford.
So
Alma mater.
I like Stanford. Stanford's good.
Yeah, it's a pretty good school.
Yeah. I'm a very cool fan.
Yeah, that.
So Paul was the senior manager of suite sales. So any suites, tickets, event sales, he oversaw. So he had his own sales team, and it was really cool to kind of see the differences between Paul and Brent and how things differ from suite sales versus sponsorship sales. So there's just so many sales attributes within this stadium. But Paul oversaw, they really kind of gave him a job to lead this team and really oversee everything. So he's a pretty interesting guy, pretty motivated, and really worked his way up like a lot of these people did. And Maggie, Community Relations, was another one that stuck out to me because it's really about giving back to the community, and in our classes we talk a lot about corporate social responsibility and how these big corporations give back to communities, and they kind of pride themselves on having 100% athlete participation. So all the 49ers contribute in some way to these community relations, working with kids. Ethan is also part of the board on Make-A-Wish, so it's a really, really important foundation for him. And so they really have high philanthropic values, and they really try to give back a lot. And Maggie really did a great job at emphasizing that to us and really showing us around and showing us the different types of events that they hold to give back.
And the last person that we met with was Jared, and this was kind of a cool program because it was solely based around the idea of youth participation in sport. And without the youth, there wouldn't be any professionals or college athletes today. And because the NFL is getting dangerous and there's safety concerns and concussions and all this, they really want to make sure children are getting the proper equipment, proper skills, and just understanding of the games to make sure that they're safe and that they also have the passion for the game after they realize that there's a potential to get hurt. But really, as a child, you're not really looking to get hurt, so you just wanted to keep playing. And from the programs that they have, once you sign up with the 49ers as an infant, you progressively go into these different level of programs, and you can start in the crib program. You can literally start when you're born all the way up until 18, which you graduate from the kids program. And this also goes into the idea of the faithful. They want to keep all of their fans and make sure their loyalties with the 49ers. So all of these different programs allow different amenities, and access to the stadium. It's just other outside programs, and they also partner with the NFL and Play 60, that initiative to get children out and playing and just kind of promote the idea of football within the community. And also, I thought was actually pretty interesting, the women's program. And I don't know if how many ladies in here know too much about football, but it's mainly a men's dominated sport. And so they want to kind of progress into a new era and get the women into understanding the game more and kind of attending the game without really needing a man by your side to really understand and watch the game. So I thought that was pretty cool to kind of tie the women into this organization because they are fans as well. So they want to kind of give them that opportunity as well as the men.
And so while we were out there, and as all of you know, the Super Bowl was held at Levi Stadium. So we were fortunate enough to be there in January. And right after the last home game, they were starting to set up for Super Bowl 50. And as we were walking out of the stadium, they're tearing down banners. The next day we walked in and they're tearing up the field. And you'll see in this picture that the little circle where the Pepsi logo would be, that had to come down because it wasn't a sponsor of the NFL. So any sponsorships that were able to stay were if they had affiliation with the NFL. Other than that, everything had to be torn down. So even across the street, they were rebuilding everything. So it was a pretty interesting time to see all of this going on. And really the NFL, for us, I think it was a learning experience to see that the 49ers really don't have a hand in it, really. So you have Levi Stadium, and they take pride in that and try to really get the name out there, but at the same time, NFL just comes in and takes over. And actually the week of the Super Bowl, none of the staff were allowed in the building. Safety protocol, and they had to take over absolutely everything. And each employee had 2 tickets reserved to them that they could purchase. And they wanted to, if they could afford it. But other than that, there's really no other luxuries that were given to them. They're kind of just kicked out. So it was really, really interesting to see everything going on while we were out there.
And I think one of the lowest level seats that you could probably get for the Super Bowl was $800 starting price. So that'll put a dent in your wallet.
And kind of to sum everything up, our last points of emphasis of what we really, really took away from this trip, basically be open to absolutely everything. Don't be afraid to say no. And like Chris talked about earlier, those limitations, Ethan really said, if you have to have those limitations, absolutely, those are your preferences. But really, if you want to make it up, you really, really have to kind of question whether those limitations are worth it. And you really can't limit yourself to staying anywhere or turning anything down.
Yeah, that's about it. We appreciate your time.
Yeah.
Can you speak a little bit about, I kind of heard through the grapevine a little bit that you were most impressed or certainly impressed with the other interns you met from other institutions, and can you talk about sort of the landscape that exists with trying to get ready for your first job, because it seems like it's a very competitive market, and I just wanted to mention that.
So one of the things that really was humbling when I went out there, a lot of the interns out there obviously have the advantage to live in a very dense sporting area. So you have the Giants, you have the Raiders, you have the 49ers, you have all these teams around the Bay Area. Warriors, thank you. So it's really humbling to meet these interns, and they've done many, many internships with all of these companies around the Bay Area, and they have those resources, which is nice, where in New England we're a little disadvantaged with having the Pats and the Red Sox and an hour and a half away. So that was really humbling to say, okay, this increases our limitations, if you will, or lack of limitations, that we really need to go out and find these internships and be willing to go absolutely anywhere. But one of the key takeaways with Ethan and the rest of the interns was just apply to everything, get your foot in the door, and it's a really small industry. So I think from pretty much everyone we talked to, they said once you get in the foot in the door and once you have those networks, it becomes a lot easier to meet more people and get those internships. Yeah, but that initial finding those internships can be a little difficult.
I think of the word internship as more of a hands-on experience than just a week. But these internships are all over and just kind of observing and
So
kind of describe what an internship is that you apply for.
A to Z, go ahead.
yeah. So this wasn't long enough to be called an internship. We called it an experience
Okay.
because it was only a week long.
Yeah, okay.
And we actually we weren't able to do any work for them because we weren't on their payroll or anything or considered an intern. So it was a shadowing experience. But with internships, from what I've seen, say, in the NFL and professional sports, some of them are summer longs, some of them are just this season, some of them go a year long. So, and then some, you'll work every day with them and be totally hands-on and be doing work from helping with proposals to doing cold calls to lifting boxes and moving them. And then they also have game day interns who just work game days and help them kind of have that extra hands. So it's really diverse. Did you have anything to add to that?
I mean, you kind of hit it home. It's just most of the people were from the San Jose area, the Santa Clara area, and they all could travel to, like the game day interns, they could travel like however long it took for them to get there. And then, it's just, if we were to go out there for an internship, we would have to find a house, we have to pay for it, and be able to support ourselves. And most of these internships aren't paid for, and I don't think they were getting paid. So we would have to find those extra connections in order to just make it out there. And it would, I think that's what put them at an advantage. And yeah, that's it.
So, I was gonna say, Stanford has an athletic training internship, and Kurt Swoboda, who was a graduate of Colby-Sawyer, was the distinguished alumnus a couple years ago, was the assistant senior athletic director at Stanford. He's now associate athletic director at the University of Michigan. So he put us in connection with the Stanford internship. But it meant, exactly like you said, Chris, that, okay, the Bay Area, the 49ers like it because it's the wealthiest place in the United States, but for a student to go live there in the summer is really, really hard. So we found money to be able to pay for the flight. So I think Kathy and I are probably going to the exact same place with this. This is an area really where if we want our students to have placements in expensive areas in great jobs that can get the Colby-Sawyer name out, we really will benefit from your support to say, okay, I'm willing to buy a plane ticket. I'm willing to help fund meals during the time that they're in New York City or wherever they are. Because without that support, the Stanford thing would never have happened for our two athletic training students.
And I think that the neat part of this was that Ethan understood when Alice and I were visiting him last fall, and we were talking through the idea of how could our students take advantage of the fact that his willingness to graciously share his experience coming up weeks before the Super Bowl, and the fact that we literally sort of brainstormed, and he said, getting housing here can be a challenge. And the conversation turned and we said, what about a job shadowing opportunity? And our hope was, and what Ethan's hope was, that the exposure for our Colby-Sawyer students to have a week-long job shadowing opportunity with him and use that to leverage the next full internship, or the job, or give our students an opportunity in when they're applying for jobs to be able to say that they've had this sort of very public, visible experience with one of the best-known brands in the country. So he recognized that while it might be a challenge for our students to go for an entire semester, he saw that in that moment he could provide two students with an opportunity that they'll never forget and hopefully they'll leverage for their career. And we were able to come back here and look and find that we had an endowed group, or a stash of funds that were specifically designated for students for internship or job shadowing opportunities, and that's how we were able to underwrite it. So it was both Ethan's generosity and some creativity on this end, and we're very excited to see where it'll go next.
I mean, I'd like to add one other thing. Since we'd never done this before, this job shadowing, it happened very, very fast from October until January. So it meant there were so many people here at Colby-Sawyer working really hard, really fast to make this happen. And these two students are amazing in that they went out there, the first time ever. No, we had never done this process before, and they experienced all sorts of things like you do in the real world, and they were so professional, such champs, really represented our college in this organization. I don't think we could have asked for any two students who did a better job, so we should all be very, very proud of them.
We're going to let you shut down here, and I think we are ready. We have our next